Gentlemen, welcome to the Madison County Board of Education's second budget hearing, as well as a work session and a special session for Thursday, September 7th, 2017. Where are we starting? I don't have a,
Let me start off with prayer.
yeah, I don't have an actual,
Call out somebody.
I don't have a,
You don't have the agenda.
I don't have the agenda. I don't have my first page.
So my-
It's
my-
several
my
pages
computer just
over in
went
your book, Ms. Bates.
down, so.
So you have a couple pages before that.
It's about 10 pages over.
Well, we can wing it, go ahead.
Here, look right here.
There it is on the projector there.
We got Mary Louise over there finding your computer stuff.
Make a note.
Thank you, Carol.
Make a note.
All right. Mr. Massey, that'd be fabulous.
Lord, thank you for this time we come together and just help us and guide us in your wisdom as we do the business of the school system. Amen. All right, we'll start off with some updates kind of going on. There's some new artwork from the Sparkman photography department that's on this back hallway, so make sure you guys come around the bend. We've got it on this hallway, on the hall of superintendents, but it's on now on the back hallway as we're livening up some of the financial parts back there. But Mr. Mittman wanted me to let you guys know and let everybody know, and I guess everybody in the YouTube world know too, that those are for sale with the proceeds going back to the photography department. If you want to buy the print, you can do that, I think $10 to $15. If you want to have it with the frame, it will be with the cost of what it came in the frame. So that's open to everybody. If you're interested, just to email Eric Mittman, E-Mittman. So you can come grab it when you pay for it there. So they do an incredible job with that department. A couple of things. We had our professional learning day on Tuesday. Again, this is one of the days that the board used to have where we had 4 half days. We decided after we came in to go to 2 full days of professional development, and that's one of the, so we have 178 student days. We used to have 180 student days several years ago. So Mr. Perkins is going to give us kind of an update of some of the successes and things that we had going around in the system. So, no, you can do it from there.
Through the Tuesday, we had our professional learning days. It was a magnificent feat when you start thinking about the number of sessions that we had going on, the number of teachers that were involved in the sessions. We had well over 110 different sessions going on around our district, covering 1,300 students. We had some staff, professional development, bus drivers, K-3, focused on fluency. They were located in 3 different sites. Kindergarten, first, second, third grade were covered. And these are instructional coaches, but they're also teachers that were involved in the professional development that took place on that day. The teachers, facilitators of these sessions, they met, they worked hard throughout the beginning of the school year, planning the different sessions to make sure it was meaningful to the teachers within our district. 4-6, we had it broken up from K3, 4-6. 4-6 met at Riverton Intermediate. We had 32 sessions there. We had about 17 presenters, and all of the presenters, everyone, were either instructional coaches or teachers. A lot, mainly were teachers, who actually had, a lot to offer within the classroom. We call 4-6 4 plus tech because it covered all the core areas, also the technology areas within the classroom. And these are professional development items, things that teachers actually can take back and use in their classroom right now. It's not something that's theoretical in nature, but it's something that they can actually take back to their classroom. And the good thing about what was taking place was we were able to build on each session. So in our July professional development sessions actually were connected to Tuesday professional development sessions. The one in February will be the same way. 6 through 12 worked on teaming and vertical horizontal teaming. There were 51 sessions that were covered in about 4 different schools. 51 sessions run by 51 teachers. Phenomenal stuff that was taking place. I've gotten back survey results from teachers. We're looking at over 90% positive feedback from our teachers. PE, elementary and secondary, art, elementary and secondary, band met together, music teachers met together, for professional development, and specific planned out topics and professional learning activities that they took place. There were sessions that were connected with outside sources from Madison City, with their music department. We planned something with them. It was very, very well received with our music teachers. Foreign language, professional development, and a lot of the sessions, were planned out in such a way where facilitators, had scripts of, the information, and they were able to go in and talk through the learning processes and things that were taking place. Aides met, special ed. There were sessions for all of our special ed teachers. It was a very, very good day, a day that was full of, a lot of learning, items, things that teachers can actually do within their classroom. And I just want to commend our teachers and presenters who actually participated. Like I said, we had well over 100 and something teachers within our district who actually took time to plan, to work together. And I'm talking about teachers came from, we had teachers from one school working alongside another teacher from another school, coming together on their time to plan, for our students, for our teachers, to give them the tools that they need so that our teachers can be better equipped to service our students. It was great, and I'd like to commend the instructional staff as well. Ms. Nancy, Jennifer Taylor, Laura, Tina, Liz. They work extremely hard working with the other individuals to make all this take place. So it was a big task, but it was a task that was well worth it, a task that was well planned out. At Riverton Intermediate, bus drivers were meeting, had a good session over there as well. So it was a great day of learning for our teachers, one that actually will be able to build on to the next session that we'll have in February. But our survey results were phenomenal feedback from our teachers.
And we also I met with some of the head coaches, kind of follow up our captain's clinic on kind of some of the same things there. So thank you guys for allowing.
And I did send you all the sessions that were offered. I put together a folder so that you can kind of see some of the items and the topics that were covered during those sessions. And also, the only thing that I've left out is some of the elective stuff, but I'll actually have that put in there so that you'll have an idea of, what was actually covered from that day.
All right. Also, I just want to get an update on our strategic plan. We brought Dr. Nichols in, and we promised him he could go at the beginning of the board meeting because he has sometimes post-traumatic stress syndrome of board meetings from the superintendent days. But we have a couple of you that have gone through these strategic planning meetings, so we're still got some ways to go. But I want to let
I think I'll be okay. Superintendent Massey, I'll survive as long as I'm only here about 5 minutes.
Okay.
No, I'm just kidding. Superintendent Massey and members of the board, first of all, let me say it's been a great privilege to work with your district and your leadership and your community members. We began this journey in late April, and since that time we've had 5 community meetings. We've used online data, allowing folks input. We've met with you as board members. We've met with central office staff as well as line staff out at the school to get both qualitative and quantitative data that we've been able to bring back to about a 30-member strategic planning team that met for 2 days. From that, you see the beginnings of where we are. We have what I call 5 central themes that came out of all of our data that the planning team helped to organize. We have expanded electives, facilities, funding, student services, and technology. And in each of those, we have 4 action items. Under the expanded electives, we have foreign language, fine arts, middle school, college ready, and workforce ready. Under facilities, we have to maintain facilities, more in the maintenance side of things, infrastructure, capital improvements, and also capital expansion. And in funding, we have community government, corporate, and system focuses. And then student services, we had academic support, behavioral support, recognition, and enrichment. And then in technology, the infrastructure, skills, curriculum, devices, hardware, and resources. Outside of that, we have what I call 2 flow themes. At the bottom, you'll see communication, which will run through each of what I call the 20 action areas, and then also equity down the side. As we looked at feedback from across your district, which is quite large and diverse, ranging from school sizes and focuses of parents, finding a way to deliver all of this to each school in your district, regardless of geographic location or size, will be a theme that we keep looking at as we go into our next meeting. On the 20th, we will convene the district staff and leadership, school level and district staff, to take each of these areas and develop an action item for each one of them, or more than one action item if that is required. In each of those action items, we'll have a performance goal for years 1, 3, and 5, and then any initiatives or information that needs to go into that as well. So that's our next journey, to take the team of your district staff and what I hope that's not me, and put meat on these bones, I guess is the best way I like to put that. We've now got the big rocks and the focus, and we want to now put action items and performance appraisals for each of those, so the board can come back 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year and be able to see where those actions are. Then we will go back to the strategic planning team and let them have a final review of where those items are and any input that they may give us, and then present that to the board. We hopefully will be somewhere around 1st to the middle of October to be able to come back to the boards, according to how much we can get accomplished in the 20th meeting that we have. And then also, I think we'll probably need at least one more follow-up meeting so they can really work in groups and put those action items and performance goals in place. So that's kind of where we are. It's a little slower timeline than I'd hoped at the end of April, but school started, and that kind of got things going. And summer vacation also played into a role. To get our strategic team together, we had to kind of work through their schedules. Several of you are on that team. Several members of the community that are here and staff were on that team. I hope that they felt that it was worth their time. They did an excellent job. I couldn't have asked for a better group of folks who gave a lot of feedback. There was open conversation about ideas. We spent a long time, some of these folks over here are on that team. Spent a long time hashing through a lot of information that we got from members of your stakeholder group. So I'll stop there, Superintendent Massey, and try my best to answer any questions if somebody wants to ask one.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Nichols.
Hey, thank you. That's the shortest board meeting I've ever participated in on my side of it. How about that? So, thank you, and we'll be back in just a short while, I hope, to present you the final product.
Very good.
All right?
Appreciate your work. Thank you. All right, next up, Karen, will be presenting the 17-18 budget. We'll be recommending approval of the budget later in our special session.
Since I'll be going through, can everybody hear me? Can you hear me? Since I'll go through the booklet quickly and refer to specific pages, I'd like for everybody to have one. My next one. I don't have slides. If you remember at the last budget hearing, we did our PowerPoint presentation and went through every slide in great detail. So tonight, I'll go over the summary budget reports and through your booklet, and the pages are numbered, and so we'll try to get through quickly, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have as we go. Let me see what I've got here. What I'll do is just highlight the changes and the updates since the first budget hearing. There's just some minor changes. And Ms. Rucker is our chair, finance chair, and there's some areas I think she would like for us to discuss or clarify a little bit more, and so I'll point those out as we go in the book. But again, if anyone has any questions or comments, stop me as we go. If you'll go to page 5 first and see the summary budget page for fiscal year 2018, each fund type is represented here, and we went over them in great detail last time at the first hearing. So, general fund has a balanced budget, and if you'll notice at the bottom with a projected beginning and ending fund balance of $14.3 million, remember that represents $12.8 million for the system's 30-day required operating reserve. $12.8 million represents 30 days. The remaining $1.5 million is funds that will be carried over, projected to be carried over into the 2018 fiscal year. So the next page, and I promise we're not touching on every page because it could be a long night. The detail of the balanced budget, when I say balanced budget, that means we have a projected beginning fund balance, our revenues and expenditures are in balance and zero out, and an ending fund balance. So this page reflects the breakdown for general fund by expenditure line item, and the slight changes here, the only changes here, and you can see the comparison to 2017, you can see our financial resources haven't changed that much. As I said last time, we're on cruise control from year to year. But the last line item, other preschool program, that's where our OSR preschool grants fall. So that's down, that projection from last time in the budget. And that's because, remember that I'm on page 6.
5.
Oh, no.
You may have counted the cover page.
Mine says 6, so I'm going to be one behind all night. Can I have a book? I'm so sorry. Page 5. I had the rough draft, so. If you'll notice, the total difference between the two budget years is $43,225. So we maintain our salaries and fringes represent 83% of our general operating budget. But in that one particular line item, if you'll remember, OSR grants, we know now that a portion of that's federal money. So I was asked, and it's required by the state, to pull those federal monies out of general fund and put them in the special revenue fund type. So that's why that difference is there from what you saw last time. Okay, does that make sense? Any questions here? If not, let's go over, we're going to skip over foundation. We covered that last time. And let's go to, okay, it's my page 14. Let's see what it is. So that must be 13 for you. Yes. Local revenue sources. Nothing changed here. We covered this last time. But remember, approximately $14.3 million in ad valorem tax revenue is to be voted on December 12th. The County Commission approved those resolutions yesterday for all 3 school systems to vote on our property tax renewals countywide as well as the district taxes. So the 3 that we have up for renewal, and I just wanted to remind this group and anyone that's listening, is our countywide as well as our 4-mill district tax, and it's projected to be, it generates around $14.3 million a year for the school system. So we need to get the word out, the importance to vote and to vote yes for these renewals and for the countywide ad valorem tax, or both. It's crucial for us to just be able to operate at the level we are now. So that's very important. So I wanted to mention that one more time. Nothing has changed on that since you saw it last time. Then if you'll go over to page 21. There's another I finalized the budget 2018 section. Again, the taxes have not changed since last time, but we finalized the all other at the bottom, which represents business privilege tax, casual sales tax, tobacco tax. I know you read this, Medicaid outreach, insurance recoveries, indirect cost, and other miscellaneous revenue. The Medicaid outreach, that covers our minibus aids for our 31 minibuses. We're not allowed to use transportation funds for that, so it's covered through the Medicaid funds that we receive for the services from Ms. Stump's staff. Okay?
What accounts for the increase in the all other?
Accounts for the increase in
All other.
the indirect cost. We finalized indirect cost because we had child nutrition's portion of it, but we didn't have the other federal programs, if you'll remember, itemized with expenditures last time.
So the 300,000 that goes up is all indirect cost?
It's indirect cost and insurance cost recoveries, and I can't remember all of it, but that's the final budget that matches that budget page in the front.
And the actual for 16 was 2.669 million, right?
I'm sorry?
So the actual budget is pretty close in line to what the actual was, what we're budgeting for 18?
Yes, yes. That middle column is
That
just a
projected.
projection of how we might end this fiscal year end. That's what we're looking at. But, and I did that projection in July. But what we need to look at is our actual in 2016 and what we're budgeting in 2018. But the majority of that difference is our indirect cost from, because we didn't have any of that in last time. And some of it is, it's possibly other fees for our OSR grants. But I can give you a detail of what that is.
But that's a little more than about $90,000 from, the 16-17 budget, or the actual budget in 16. So.
Well, 16 would have been last year's, right? And projected is what we're about to finish this year.
Right.
That's correct.
So-
But the projected is not a real number yet. I mean, you'll be able to update that with an actual number.
I sent you an email, I don't know if you saw it, Ms. Rucker, explaining those differences.
No, I don't know, was it recent, in the last hour or so? 'Cause I.
Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
okay.
And I covered all of that, what these projections represented and what the differences were here.
Okay.
I mean, I can pull it out if we want to talk about it.
Now, I guess I get questions about, every year our local revenue, property and sales tax, it has an upward trend to it. And
Right.
so, the question comes up, well, if your revenues are increasing, why can't you ever catch up on your capital needs?
It's because
And so-
our state funds have not increased. And so we're taking, well, we have too many capital needs for that to occur anyway, but with our state revenues, the state and the local offset each other. So when state allocation go down, we backfill with the local for our
But
nurses.
the state went up this year, right?
Well, so we talked about, if you don't mind me jumping in here.
Please.
Because I'm the District 9, I haven't told you all this, I'm the District 9 representative, superintendent representative, so I'm now on the board, the state superintendent board, SSA. And we met last week, and Andy Craig, the state CFO, came in and did a presentation. And this is pretty typical of what goes up on around the state where local property taxes may increase, so local revenue increases, but what happens is the match going back has to also increase. So what we're getting from the state is not. So the gap of what the state provides the overall budget, the local systems are having to pick up more and more every year. So what happens, and that's what we're going to ask and lobby our state legislators this year, is just to increase, we're going to ask for an increase in our OCE, or other cost expenditures thing, because we just need those funds, not just for teaching units, not just for other things. We need the funds because as our local is increasing, the state funds are not, so the gap is widening of the pressure that's on the local systems. And it's eating up any local system growth. And that's not just for us, it's actually having statewide. And there was a stat where, and I'm going to get these percentages wrong here, but I know it's about a 4% gap. But 10 years ago, it was a 10% margin of what local systems had to cover over the state, and now it's a 14%. And just that year, each year it ticks up of what local has to put forward to just make the system run. So while we talk about being level funded in 2008, that's what we say when we talk to our legislators, we need level funding. Well, the cost of everything has increased and the state has not been able to match those local gains. So any local revenue increase that we have is almost a net zero. And if we ever had the same local revenue from the year before, we're going to have problems even meeting the same budget that we had last year because what we're getting from the state is decreasing.
It's eaten up in personnel cost, and I'll go over how I explained it in in the email I sent you. But if you go back to page 5, her budget from this year to last year, like I said, is $43,000 difference. So every penny that the increase in the sales taxes is going, and you know, on your spreadsheet also, you showed that our personnel costs from my numbers I gave you in local funds are up $476,000, yet our non-personnel costs are down $490,000. So for a net difference of $13,000. So it's in personnel cost, and like Mr. Massey was saying, OCE doesn't keep up with even like our step raises for our support personnel. It's not enough to cover that. And then we also added the small amount we did for our coaching supplements as part of it. We had 2.5 more locally funded, when you look at across the board, at assistant principals, based on our state-earned units, our enrollment was a little bit down, so we had to pick up a little bit more local funds there. So any increases that we receive, but on this page, we're not comparing apples to apples. So that was not to say, that's our projection of how we would end the fiscal year. If we should end the fiscal year with some overages, we can carry that over into fiscal year 18. We can hold it there, or we can apply it somewhere in the first budget amendment in January where it might be needed.
So the answer to the question is, the increase that we get in property taxes and sales taxes is eaten up by inflation and personnel costs.
Yes, ma'am, the majority, yes, ma'am. Because our non-personnel costs are actually down this year from last year.
And the state is getting an increase in the education budget fund. And again, there'll be another increase this year. They're projecting a large increase into the ETF, the Education Trust Fund. What the legislator wants to do with that extra money in there is to create the AAA, the Accountability Act, where basically they take huge chunks of public school dollars and they give it to students who want to go to private schools. And these can be off-the-wall private schools. Like most of our prominent private schools in Madison County don't accept AAA funds, but the state allocates $30 million a year to that. This is the Governor Riley, his kind of pack that they go through and pressure legislators to divert more money out of the ETF, and they have. They diverted $30 million, and the state Senate passed a bill to even be able to increase that more, and the House killed it the last day of the session, and that's why we need to keep talking to them. There was another set of that increase that was set aside for technology that we would have gotten about $200,000 for, I think. Mark, you weren't here when we were doing all that, but that passed the House, but didn't pass the Senate. The reason it didn't pass the Senate because the Senate was mad at the House for not increasing more funds to go to the private schools. So when the session starts back in January, these legislators that are all going to be running for office in this quadrennium, it's probably going to be an increase of about $100 million to the ETF this year. So they're growing statewide too, but these legislators want to take that and combine budgets and take that off education and put it in some of their other areas. So that's the other thing that has hurt the state is they haven't had the increase in the state revenue to match the increase in the local revenue. So our local revenue's increased, state revenue has been flat except for the last couple of years, but the state, a lot of our state government wants to take that and skim it off the top to meet general fund needs and the other things. So that's why we're going to need to be vigilant in our representatives and ask them when they're running this time around, if they're going to continue to do that, to support the education. And that needs to come to school systems is what we want to do. And the OCE gives us more local control of that than anything else. They passed the 4% pay raise. Well, that's great, and our folks deserve it and need it. But the teacher pay raise is covered by the state, but we have our local teaching units and our other assistant principals, we cover that. That's out of the local. So that costs us every year from here on out. Well, for our support personnel, that comes in the OCE, but a lot of that is not fully covered by the state. So the raise has added a burden.
We
on
have the
local
recurring
systems, too.
cost of the raise for our local units every year, the state mandated 4% raise, so
That's
that's
right.
part of it. Our CMP required transfer was up $53,000 this year, but again, the majority of it, and you saw our local match,
Right, yeah, that
that's
ate up a
500,
bunch.
so the revenue increases, so does the local match, but it's all personnel cost related with inflation, and if you'll note, I've made this comparison in the PowerPoint. From 2008, during the recession that occurred in 2009, the only increases we've received from the state are for any state mandated raises, and that's strictly for state earned units. And there's been a couple since then, of course, 4% last year. So the state's not keeping up. So in essence, our local support has to increase. And that's where the money goes.
And they'll be debating a
There
raise
is
this
no
time.
money for capital in that.
And if they pass a raise, it's going to add more pressure to the local system.
Yeah.
So it's,
I mean, when you've got a $43,000 difference from one year to the next overall with your operating, I mean, it's the majority is personnel, since that's 83% of our budget. Let's see what's the next one. We're just going to, well, it's the next page, but this is again, just for those that weren't here last time. I'm sorry, it's on page 22. This is just to emphasize again our local our local, I'm trying to see without glasses. Okay. Again, everybody knows that the comparison of local funding per student among the three school systems, I say this at every meeting we've had, this has not changed since last time. You're very familiar with our ranking in the state overall, and another reason to focus on our ad valorem tax renewal. So we're all familiar with that slide, but for those that weren't here, I just wanted to make sure they knew it was in here so they can share it with their friends and neighbors. Ms. Rucker wanted us to touch on looking at the fringe benefits on page 25. We're into general fund expenditures now, and so this is the board's share of our benefits, and you can see our retirement share is 12.24%. Of course, FICA and the insurance, that's every employee in the school system, whether it's a support person or a certified person. We pay $800 a month for the insurance. Now, in talking about, this is the employer share that's included in the budget. I didn't include the employees, what they pay, that comes out of their check because it's not budgeted. But it's on the RSA website what their options are. Say you're an employee that was hired after June 2013, you're a Tier 2 employee, so you contribute 6% to the state retirement system. If you're a Tier 1 employee, anyone that had retirement credit prior to January 1st, 2013, you contribute 7.5%, so that hasn't changed this year. And of course, your PHIP varies based on what options if you carry family coverage or you don't carry family coverage. We also offer life insurance to each employee. See that $25.20 there? That has not increased, I know, in 16 years. Aflac had it, then Mutual of Omaha bought it out to cover us, did not increase the rate, and that provides $14,000 in life insurance to every employee that's under 64, I think. Let me look at that and make sure I'm right. I was just going to touch on the employee benefits and the employee side, and then if you have questions about it, I'll try to answer them. Through age 64, it provides coverage of $14,000. Age 65 to 69, $9,100, and age 70 or above, a $7,000 coverage. But that premium has been the same, thank goodness, for 16 or more years. And that's through Mutual of Omaha. But again, the withholdings from an employee depends on whether they're a Tier 1 or Tier 2 employee and the options that they may select. They can add to the life insurance. for their spouse, their children. So, and it's in $5,000 increments, so. But that's not in the budget because we don't pay for that. Anything else on that? Let's move on to the general fund expenditures that we covered last time. There are a few areas that I think we need to clarify or discuss just a little bit further. So let's go to page 27. We're talking about the general fund instructional support, and then the computer services. I didn't go over last time what ESGI was, so I put that in parentheses out there. That's the kindergarten assessment for reading and math, and it's $12,000 annually. That's our license amount. But we're in here, you see Admina, that's our virtual school software, and I discussed this with Mr. Solly. He's not here tonight, he's at a conference, but he talked about we do use that, and I'm going to defer to Mr. Perkins and Mr. Massey for our high schools as well, not just for our virtual school. And I think the questions come up, what are our plans moving forward? Because we have almost 80 kids right now in virtual school, and you don't know when you're piloting it the first 2 years how that's going to go. So we have 2 teachers that are locally funded to cover that. However, we can charge that back to these schools in which they're enrolled possibly next year, once we know how it's going and what the plans are. And I'd rather Mr. Perkins and Mr. Massey address that just quickly, how that looks and what the plans are.
So, last year we had this was covered by our staff at Pace, and so our virtual schools only open 2 hours a day, and they rotated folks from our Pace Academy to the virtual school. So this year, and the feedback that we got was that there was more need for support in the areas of English and math. So we decided to invest 2 local teaching units into this, keep it open all day. We have our campus here in the Career Tech Center that's open, and also at Sparkman 9, there's a classroom in their media center that we use, and every day it's open all day. So parents can drop their kids off all day there, and the teachers rotate. So the math teachers one day here, and English teacher there. So, and I've dropped by there and checked the logs of folks coming in and out. To do that through this first month of school, the enrollment has just steadily kind of creeped up. We started with about probably 40, and we're now above 80 as of today. And so with 2 teachers covering 80 kids, it seems like that is a good investment. It's still, we haven't had more than a dozen or so in there at any one time. So if we, what we can do is next year with that, our schools will be earning those units. That's still sort of a teacher for every 40 kids, which is a really good rate. So it's still going to be a good deal. It's going to, because right now our virtual school is not a standalone school, so they don't earn their own units. The school where they reside earns those units.
Once we have 250, if that's our goal, it's a standalone.
That's right. Yeah, and the state requires you have that many before it's standalone. Which is what Athens kind of built to that point. So until we get there, what I anticipate next year to do is they will, we have our middle schools. It's grades 7 through 12. So all of those schools that have students can kind of chip in to help fund that teacher, whether it's 2 or if we end up getting, the enrollment keeps growing, if we need to get 3. But that can be charged back to our state-earned units per school with that.
It would be a small
that's the plan
percentage
next
for
year.
those students wherever they've enrolled.
So are those students that would have been in the classroom, or those like homeschoolers?
They're about half and half. Last time I checked, is about half of them are actually new students to our system that reside in our system that want to give it a shot, and others are currently in the school, and they want to try this out. They think it may be a better fit. So we get a little bit of both. We have some that do virtual school, and they may go back and participate in choir at their home base, or they may participate in our career tech school. In fact, some of the homeschool folks want their child to have those career tech opportunities. So the way to do that is to kind of go through our virtual school to do that, because they get a little bit of the best of both worlds there. It really, I know school choice is, a hot topic nationally, but it really does allow more choice for our parents to be pretty dynamic and on in their education with that.
Any more questions on virtual school? Also, when working with computer services in their budget this year, Mr. Wilson worked and negotiated to move funds around with just a slight increase in the budget over last year for non-personnel costs. And we have something we call computer replacement set aside because from year to year. I'm just going to let him explain exactly what we do with that money. So he wanted to put more in there and take from other areas in the IT budget. But he can explain, we're not on one-to-one initiative. We're not even close because we don't have the resources to do that. So this is how we handle that in our budget in Madison County from year to year.
And what we have for all our labs, we have a 5-year replacement. So every 5 years, we hope to put new technology inside those labs. Problem is, a couple of years ago, we got behind, and then we got behind again. Now we're 2 years behind. And so we're trying to play catch-up. I'm going to try to do 11 labs this year, which is, 30 times 11 schools. So that's a lot of equipment we're going to try to move in there and get them upgraded. One problem we have is we've never really had a plan to replace teacher computers. I kind of hate to even mention this, but we have 1,200 machines out there right now that are still using XP. XP came out in 2001. And the technology is that old in some of the teachers' classrooms, and we have a couple of labs that are on that. Excuse me. And Microsoft even quit supporting that in 2014. So we've not even had support for those machines for 4 years now. And we're trying to get rid of them as fast as we can, but we just don't have the machines to replace it. That's why I'm trying to find some more money, try to get these teachers a little better technology to replace them.
And those are still on the network, Mark? Those.
Yes, all the teachers are still on the network.
And they're
the problem
working?
with that is they will not even do I-Nows in there. So they're not
Say.
compatible with their management system. Computer management, so that's a big issue we're having on our end.
How many did you say? 1,200?
1,200 XP.
So how does the Chromebook, because everybody got a Chromebook, so how does that fit in?
Yeah, so the Chromebook was kind of a Band-Aid to get something to our teachers. And so the Chromebook that you have, everything is web-based. There's no hard drive in it. So it doesn't do Microsoft Word, those kind of documents. It is good for Google Docs and for sharing PowerPoints and things like that. But it's for so a lot of teachers have been able to kind of convert to that. But there is, we've got to kind of figure this out as we go through of how, what do we need to do for our teachers? How powerful machines do they have, or are the Chromebooks going to work? If so, because they still have the old computer and a Chromebook. So the Chromebook, we didn't take out the 12, 14-year-old computer. They still will use that. The Chromebook was an extra kind of thing they can use at their podium when they're using to teach or a teaching tool. So it was.
So we don't know if they need both or not. I mean, we're trying to figure that out.
Chromebook won't work for everything. Like if you're teaching something you want to use Microsoft Word or PowerPoint, it won't really work for that. They have their own versions that are similar, but we can't teach the Microsoft product.
So like if you had clickers, or we have these portable writing tablets where if you write, it splashes up on the screen. That takes software to run on that. Well, you can't install software on a Chromebook. That needs to be on a PC or a Mac to be able to do that. So if you're using software, or educational software or things like that, then you need a PC, so it can't do everything. But and that's the good thing about some of the, so when we buy things for our teachers, we try not to buy things that need software, because what if it won't run? So our virtual school that we use with the Adminum is all cloud-based. It will work with the Chromebook. But teachers do have other things that they need to use with that software. But for our students, like it used to be Plato or A+ curriculum or credit recovery, it required software on there. So for our student use, we think we can stick with Chromebooks and take care of what the students need, except if it's for like our cyber classes or computer science classes. Chromebook doesn't work for that. They need a real computer to do that.
So your labs in elementary schools, is Chromebooks an option for the elementary school labs, or are we still looking at
For
PCs?
some of it, it's kind of half and half. But what I'm trying to do for the business labs, when they come up with replacement robotics,
Mhm.
try to give them PCs.
Right.
But, I mean, the PCs cost 3 times as much as Chromebook.
Right.
So that, that's really makes my expenditures go up. And then along the same lines, we're using 12-year-old and 10-year-old smart boards and Promethean boards. So we're trying to make that change slowly as well. We had one meeting in our place today going over some lab integration. And somebody will find this funny. Somebody brought in a Gateway laptop. That company's been existed for 10, 12 years. But that's what they were trying to use in a meeting with a Gateway laptop. It didn't work.
And that's why we added 100,000 to that budget for a total of 600,000 but with everything, how Mark worked it, it was a net impact of 33,000 compared to last year, and last year's was already down. We'd cut the last 2 years, so it's because our devices and what our kids are using for labs, this is not one-to-one, are 10 years old, basically.
Well, Mark, and you know this as well as I do, not only are the 1,200 machines, software didn't work, you have a security risk there too, because there's no updates, there's nothing, so, that's a prime target for hackers or whatever's trying to get on those machines. Those XPs they need to go.
And our policy now is they break, we let them go, but
Right.
when you do that, the teacher's sitting there, this is all I have.
Right.
And it's hard to do that sometimes. So we try to keep them going as best we can.
Mark, this may not be a budget question, and we can defer it to later, but basically, how are computer labs being used in the schools right now?
Well, they're, like for elementary, they are required to have an hour from K through 8, an hour a week in a lab. So they're using a lot, and the labs are really becoming our major testing centers. We're doing testing almost every day for certain groups, so the labs make that really good because you can monitor them all at the same time. And then we've got our business labs, which they're both constantly trying to do business ed apps and accounting apps and all that stuff. And then we have some other labs that are more general labs, and they're being filled up by classrooms wanting to do projects because they can't get enough devices inside the classroom. So they'll go to the lab environments trying to do a project that will improve collaboration problem.
Thank you. Can you take Scantron test on a Chromebook?
Yes. That's been our saving grace. If they wanted us to do it on PC, we would have been in trouble. And then next spring, they want to do it on our Chromebook, but they want to have it on kiosk mode and monitor. And it's going to be a lot more people taking that exam, so we're kind of worried about that. But
Bandwidth concerns or?
yeah, bandwidth concerns, and we're talking about technology. Some of my schools only have 100 meg worth of bandwidth going to the school. I mean, we have more than that at our house. But that's the bandwidth that goes back and forth between that school and the central office or the county office to pull all our SDI data off. And I've got a plan to try to increase that. I haven't got back on that, but that'll be an increase. But we desperately need that, especially during testing.
And how did the upgrades also impact our E-rate discount?
Well, what we're trying to do on that, next fall, or probably next January, I'm gonna go to E-rate. We can still we have access to $1.5 million in network equipment we can buy. That'd be access points, switches. That should make our network really, really good as far as the backbone. We have to match. So right now, I have to have 30% of that 1.5 million in order to get that 1.5 million. So some of these funds will be used for that. And that E-rate, that benefits everybody. That's the greatest thing we can impact on students. But that E-rate impacts every student every day for the whole year. So that's the best bang we can get for our money because we pay 30 cents on the dollar for equipment. But we've got to have that match and prove if something happens that we can have it all, or they won't allow us to have those funds. So that's the federal government use that permission.
Okay.
If it wasn't for E-rate, we wouldn't have a network.
Anything else with computer services? Or any other questions? We'll skip over to transportation. Just a reminder, Mr. Evans and Mr. McCord presented on the Synovia software program that we implemented this year. So just a brief overview, Mr. Evans, of the pricing of our trapeze routing software as well as Synovia and its purposes.
The trapeze software is our routing software, which is antiquated, no longer supported. We would like to upgrade it, but we're trying to hold off another year and contain that cost. Mr. Brooks uses that routing to answer some questions to Justice Department, who rides what bus, where, so that all comes out of trapeze. The Synovia we were really, really excited about. We were excited about the safety and security portion of it. Past couple of weeks where we've had weather, we've had to rely on bus drivers to call in on the radio, principal to call in, and somebody forgets and we don't know. Now Mr. McCord can sit there and watch, and we all do. Each bus is a key turns on and where it's located. So when Buckhorn Middle, Buckhorn High School buses are in, it will show all of them on that campus with all of them key off. If we have one still out on the route, you click on the GPS thing and bring it into focus of where it is, how long it's going to be. We work with two different companies. The cost originally was north of $100,000 a year, plus installation, plus hardware. Which would be about $140,000. By agreeing to be a demonstration site for Synovia in Alabama, we got installation, hardware and everything, and our fee is $59,000. They're wanting to get into the business of schools and all this, and we've also actually worked with our sheriff's department. They're looking at implementing that, so they can be part of our plans. But the safety and security of Synovia has been great for our schools, and it's also, working well with our electronic timekeeping.
Thank you. I had skipped over maintenance. If you go back, I ran a 10-year history, and we have had no increase as far as those extra, that windfall of money that we get every year, that increase to cover maintenance. So it has stayed the same since the recession in 2001, right, Mr. Wilkerson? No, not that far back. We were doing better prior to 2008. So I didn't touch on maintenance. But if we can move forward to the special revenue fund type, unless you have any more questions on general fund expenditures. Anybody? Last time when we were talking about our federal programs, we went over the allocation. So if you'll flip to page 32, the only changes there are with the ELL. We received that allocation that covers just a portion of one of our 4 ELL teachers. So we received that allocation of $30,687. That's our federal. And then Ms. Stovall has applied for $35,000 for our homeless program. We usually don't know or not notified until November on that pot of money. So that's what we've applied for. So only changes on that sheet. And the next page, we went over the OSR grants, and I'm not going to go over those again. But if you'll look over to Idea B, so you can see a breakdown. Last time I only gave you the allocation sheet, so you didn't have a breakdown of the expenditures. This is our Idea B for our special needs population. And this is the allocation and the breakdown of expenditures. Gina Gross works closely with our federal program administrators and works with them on their budget. And this was, you can see our aides, we have 81 currently, and their subs cover, as we've talked about this before, 70% of the budget. So that's the breakdown for Idea B. Any questions about any of this before we move on to Title I? I'm only covering the major federal programs. Title I, we have 11 Title I schools now. We talked about that last time. That changed a little bit, that allocation sheet. If you'll move to, I guess it's page 35 for you guys. The breakdown, I think we had showed that we had $2,037,000 last time for the schools, the 11 schools. But after everything was taken off the top, the required set-asides and the admin cost, we have $2,060,000 to, if you'll look at the next page, to allocate to our Title I schools. So if you'll go over to the next page, 36, you'll see that. And the way that's allocated, you take the total amount available once the set asides and everything's been taken off the top, and you divide it by the number of poverty children to get the amount per school, per child, and then you multiply it back by, say, Madison County Elementary has 218, and that's why their allocation is $147,000. That's how you come up with that calculation. So on the following 3 pages, I believe, you can see each Title I school and how their funds are budgeted. Personnel costs and non-personnel costs. We didn't break down the non-personnel costs for every school because some of it's PD, most of it's supplies, technology. Dina, is that the major software?
If I can add one thing, and one thing you may look odd on page 35, that top line item, you see where it has private schools there? You can correct me if I say this incorrectly, Karen, but
Okay.
if our private schools in the area have kind of figured out if they get a student that's zoned for a Title I school, they can request those Title I funds to come from that system to the private school. So we have some private schools in the area that have kind of caught on to that, and we hope that that's not a trend that continues, but that's
We're
where
required
that-
to notify them every year in case they want to participate, and we did have one to participate this year,
Yes.
and that comes off the top. Any questions as you look through the next few pages for those Title I?
So how much in total does OSR eat up our Title I? Is that, can you see that somewhere?
We have it, I can get it to you. Any overage with their salaries, depending on where an OSR preschool teacher
1.2
falls.
million.
Is it,
20,000 per classroom.
okay.
So on page 33 has all of the, the pre-K split between title and non-title. Yeah, and it's about an average of $20,000 for each one of those pre-Ks. There's some more and some less, depending on how many years experience a teacher may have or what degree they may have, but it's kind of a good approximation. And we have that broken down more detailed if we can get you later. I think we actually presented that when we were talking about all the pre-K
Yeah, I
stuff
think so.
a couple months ago.
We can move on to Title II unless there's any more questions with Title I. This is our class size reduction, and the allocation this year is $509,000. We were able to cover 4 teachers at the schools noted here, and that total was, we didn't break it down here, was like, it represented 44% of the budget, or $224,000. And then the remaining, unless there's something that comes up and we need to use that for personnel cost, was for instruction, professional development, the majority of which goes to substitutes for our teachers to be able to attend professional development throughout the year. And it was $284,000, or 56% of the budget. So that's the Title II. We covered child nutrition last time. Unless you have any questions, we will move on with child nutrition. Nothing changed in the debt service. You can see on page 44, our debt service payments for the year, $12.7 million, and we share that general fund with our state capital purchase money. It's used for our debt. And I went over that. And then our capital projects, we will, I know we'll be discussing or looking at a capital plan tonight, but that's where we are right now as far as the funds, the total funds for capital. We have the 4 pockets of money and how those are used, and that's on page 45. Last but not least, we went over the fiduciary fund type last time. That has not changed. Let's move over to the staffing summary. It's the last page. It's page 50, and then go on to 51. As you can see, we had 2,310 employees at this time last year, and 2,302, so we're holding our own with that. And this does include OSR employees, because they are Madison County Board of Education employees, but it does not include any adjunct employees that we have. So that's one reason it's down a little bit, and we lost 6 earned units too. So there's some differences there, but we did gain others. So this is the net effect, I will say, from 2302. From 20, we're down 8 employees. If you'll notice, the central office, that's from reorg. We did add 1 in payroll, but the other 2 was just a reorg. That's not really an addition, 2 for 1 deal. Then in computer services and maintenance, we moved 1 employee from maintenance to computer services when you're comparing to last year, and everything else is the same. I gave you, lastly, I gave you a sheet, the board members, just an update on the local funded units. And like I said, we have a total, when you compare teachers, counselors, administrators, including assistant principals, we have 2.5 more than we had last year. And again, that includes those 2 at virtual school. So we're doing a fabulous job with staffing. And that's because of everybody in this room, and Mr. Kubik heads that up and works with the instruction, Mr. Massey and Dr. Minsky, and we're just doing a fabulous job with our staffing. Some of the principals may not think that, right? But we give them their state earned units, and then they're not talking. They're not speaking to me tonight. Anyway, that's all I have, unless you have some questions about anything we went over or we did not go over. And we will ask that summary page is what we'll be approving in this special session.
I just wanted to note one thing, and on like the intermediate schools, Riverton and Moore's Mill, they are getting a total of 5 teachers because of a grade divisor inadequacy, and I don't know if that's something we considered when we started configuring schools like that or not, but if you made K through 6 schools, they don't seem to require extra units like that. So is that an unintended outcome of that configuration, or was it anticipated?
Well, are you asking me?
Or whoever, I don't know.
I'm sorry. No, that's, honestly, to me, when we talk about future configurations, I want to avoid 4-6 schools for that reason. The thing is when we were kind of trying to go back and research why those decisions were made, the board didn't take into account the way that the state allocates the units, and I would kind of lay the blame on that, is that, to have 1 teacher for every 14 students in grades 3, but only 1 teacher for every 22 students in grades 4 is ridiculous. I have, because of voicing that, our system voicing that, and our principals at those schools voicing that, the legislature had a little bit of funds to reduce 1 strand of teaching unit or the divisors, and they chose grades 4 through 6. My proposal this year is going to be to eliminate the grades 4-6 divisors and to have a K-6 divisor and a 7-12 divisor. Right now we have 4 different divisors depending on what grade level there are. So that's kind of a state legislature decision. But when you have so many of our schools, we have back-to-back schools right by each other. Mount Carmel and Riverton are right next door to each other. You can't have having 2 K-6 schools next door with different zones when they're adjacent. Doesn't make sense. Lynn Fanning and Moore's Mill are right next to each other. So having 2 K-6 schools that are, which one you're zoned for, doesn't make, so that's why that configuration.
We sort of do that.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Carrie, but this was because of overcrowding. We changed the grade configurations for facility purposes, and I know that's not always the best reason to make decisions, but we had overcrowding in these clusters, and so we made those K-3 to remove the portables and set up the different, the 4, 5, 6.
The divisors weren't that great, but what has happened is more money has come into the education budget. As they put it into divisors, you have advocates for middle schoolers, like we need to focus on middle schools, lower middle school divisors. And, okay, we need to focus on high schools, let's lower the high school divisors. Oh, those little kids in kindergarten, they're so cute, we need to lower their divisors. And so every strand has lower divisors, and since most places in Alabama don't have 4-6 schools, there's been no advocate to say, hey, what about the fourth graders? Because in K-6, it's not like, if you have a K-6 school, it's not like your K-3 has one divisor and 4-6 have another. They clump them all together. So for the 98% of the elementary schools in Alabama that aren't 4-6, this doesn't affect them. But it just, after this was decided, the legislature started, because there's 4 strands, which is ridiculous, because there's 4 strands, the 3 that it focused on were the K-3s, the middle schools, and then the high schools. And they just forgot about the 4. They honestly have forgotten about the 4-6 grade strand. And so it puts tremendous pressure on the class sizes at Moores Mill and Riverton. Literally every single class has more than 30 kids in it.
That's why I'm wondering, I mean, like Legacy and Monrovia Elementary are pretty close together, and yet they're zoned differently. So I guess I'm not understanding why we might want to consider, especially if things continue to go south with our funding.
Right.
If we might want to rezone those to be K through 6.
And what we've done to kind of try to alter that is we give some units from Mount Carmel and Riverton go to Mount Carmel and Riverton Elementary, basically give some of their units to the intermediate, and Lynn Fanning gives some of its units to Moores Mill. You can't give them from Hazel Green to Moores Mill because they're Title I. You can't give away units if you're Title I. So some of those extras have come from other schools.
But we're still
in there.
spending almost
Oh, I agree.
$500,000 a year.
It drives me crazy to do that. And I think to do that, we'd have to go through the federal court system and the plaintiffs and all that to rezone. The legislature needs to fix it, and they can fix it in January.
Well, let me just say that the reason it was done that way is because there was a small city of portable classrooms at Mount Carmel. When this idea came up, I thought, it can't be that bad. You know, I drove over there. I've never seen so many portables. They were neat, but we had all kind of children in portables. Nathan, you know. And Moores Mill was no different. It's what we always do in Madison County. We're using a Band-Aid to try to fix something, to do the best thing we can do for kids every day. And it's costing us a little money in local units, but we no longer have all those children in portable classrooms.
The cost benefit is nothing compared to what.
Exactly.
they were touting. It was a facility issue. It wasn't that we just dreamed we wanted 4th, 5th, and 6th grade
Right.
configurations.
It just was a stopgap measure to get those kids out of portables, so they weren't having to live with that every day and traipse through the rain and
But now you
whatever.
can go back and, I mean, you still have the same number of kids and the same number of buildings. You just put different people in different buildings, and all of a sudden you have a K-6 school. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's not, you can
So-
still do that.
So
We built
Lynn
the middle
Fanning-
school and the Moores Mill Intermediate School.
So Lynn
We don't have
Fanning-
the same number of buildings.
Lynn Fanning and Moores Mill are in the southeast corner of Hazel Green's district. Almost every kid that goes to Hazel Green goes through Moores Mill. Okay, some of Walnut Groves don't go through Moores Mill, but if you have a school zone like this, both of those schools are in the bottom right-hand corner. So how do you get two different schools, two different zones for two schools that are right here? It's impossible to draw up. And so we could do that, but we could, again, the process for changing zone lines would be very rigorous. And I'm working on what I can control now is to educate legislators on this. They got the message. Senator Orr has got it. He was over the education budget. They lowered the 4-6 divisors. If the next move, I think, and this is, I kind of mentioned to the panel with the superintendents last week, was to eliminate the 4-6 divisor and just take K-6 and combine them together. And if they have a K-6 divisors, that fixes our problem.
We built one school in the Hazel Green cluster family, Moores Mill Intermediate, to relieve all the crowding in the portables.
right.
We built
Exactly.
one school in the Buckhorn cluster, which is Buckhorn Middle, to relieve all the portables on every campus.
Because Riverton
Exactly.
Elementary wasn't without portables either. They didn't have as
They
many as
all
Mount Carmel.
had
but-
it.
I'm not questioning why we built them. I'm just saying now that you built them, would it make
But
sense to
it's not the same
reconfigure
number
them?
of buildings. We built 2 new schools and did the grade configurations to make a K-5 school and K-3.
It does where it geographically makes sense, and that's why we have K-6 schools at Newmarket and at Walnut Grove, and we have K-8 schools too, where where it makes sense. I mean, we've got every grade configuration in Alabama, we have it right here. And we do it based on location, capacity of our schools. Our grade configuration is not based on research, it's based on where can we put
Need.
these kids under a
Facility
roof.
need,
That's what everything's based on.
and that's what it was based on.
And so at this point, though, the way the schools are located, I think it would be inconvenient and difficult to have more, some of those K-6 schools. It's 4-6, the solution was just what we have, it's what we have. And it works well, we just need the state to work with us on, and to understand that. And
I'm all for it if they'll fix it, but if they don't, and we're scrambling around trying to figure out where we're gonna get
Yeah,
$500,000,
I mean-
that might be a place to get it from.
You're,
And the transportation cost of trying to transport two schools would eat up any savings.
That's true.
It would take, I mean, the beat, it would take more buses, more people can travel different directions. So that anything we save would eat up transportation costs.
all right. Anything else? Thank you, Karen. All right, Ken, you want to talk about our Jason Flat policy?
A year ago, we got a memo from the state of Jason Flat Act, and the memo stated that there was a model policy that was drafted, Jason Flat was enacted for suicide prevention. The memo also stated that more guidance would come at a later date. So we started working on a policy, and we received, remember when we did our policy review, we did the whole policy manual, we had AASB come in and do that for us and work with us over that 2 or 3 year process. And AASB, we have a policy pipeline that we get from them, it's a subscription. And they go over all the new legislation and new changes. Well, the end of July, Ms. Thompson and I, we got the policy pipeline conference call, and the Jason Flat Act was on there. And they provided with 2 drafts of the act based off of the state memo for the policy. One was a standalone policy, one was the policy incorporated with the harassment policy. Madison County Schools, our harassment policy over some OCR investigations and some complaints, our harassment policy has to be approved by the Office of Civil Rights. So when we were looking at which way to go with this policy change, a standalone or an incorporation, it would have involved us having to send it back to OCR and having them go through the whole process, and they could come back and say, it's not acceptable. So, talked with Mr. Perkins about it, Ms. Thompson, we decided to go with the standalone policy. AASB is the one who drafted it. It is their policy that, they took from the state model. And so what we have here for you tonight is the actual policy that we'll be looking to send in a policy review, and this is to be in compliance with the law of suicide prevention.
What is the date that this has to be?
When is the date that it has to be in?
Yeah, implemented.
Well, the model policy that the state gave us was back in September of
Right.
16. So the sooner we can get it.
I got you. Okay, okay.
If you don't follow the law or create a policy about it, when we get audited.
No, I'm not suggesting, I just said what was the timeline?
Yeah, I mean, if you don't do it, you
Yeah.
just get dinged by the auditor saying you're not complying with state law, so we just need to do it whenever we, and we've taken our time, it's been law since, I think they passed it last April.
But we did just receive this the end of July
And,
from AASB.
and
the
it
pipeline
took
update.
AASB to take some time to kind of formulate it, and we wanted to vet it too, so we feel like we've been timely on it.
If I remember correctly from the discussion we had earlier on this, all the training that is required by this is borne on the school system, correct? Cost of that training?
Yes, a lot of the training is on the schools. We've been working with
Okay.
the hospital down there, and they've actually been providing training for us,
Okay.
and they will be providing training for us for people.
The first statement there is great, to the extent the legislature appropriates funds. that is, I mean, everybody's laughing, but so many unfunded mandates come down from the legislature of things that we're expected to do that it can just drain your local funds. So, you know, I think it's great that Huntsville Hospital is offering that. It sounds like a great program they've come and presented to us, so.
All right, and we will bring this up for approval next board meeting later this month.
Correct, in 2 weeks. It'll go out to policy, the ESPO and the MCEA first thing tomorrow morning.
Okay.
They know it's coming, they just, I wanted to make sure the board heard it first.
Okay. All right. Next up, we're just going to have a second discussion for our community advisory groups, if you guys had any other input. So Alita met with policy review today to kind of discuss some of the changes that you suggested. There were some of the changes we kind of, the dismissal piece, we couldn't really figure out a good way to word that, so we left it off. If you have any suggestions on that, we can look at that. Otherwise, it doesn't say we can't dismiss folks from it. So if we put something in there, it may tie our hands, honestly. So just kind of wanted to open the floor for comments, and Alita's here too to help guide us in there. So is there any other comments from what?
Matthew, we added the phrase up to 7 members, so that some of our smaller schools, Crossroads, University of schools, it could get a full 7, it would still be
And it would still be 2 from the board, and then the principal would have that discretion. Any other comments on that? Okay, we'll be bringing that up for approval at the board meeting in a couple of weeks here. All right. That's it. I think we're ready to start our special session. You ready?
Yep.
All right, I recommend approval of our agenda for a special session dated September 7th, 2017.
Motion?
Second.
So a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding the agenda? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the FY 2018 budget.
Motion.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion on the budget? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 I recommend approval of the following contracts for services as attached.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion regarding contracts for services?
I just had one question. I didn't have time today to call and ask. I apologize. But, like, I noticed that some, like, number 1 is, I think an employee, and we're contracting with that same person. Is that unusual?
That's for homebound.
I know, but aren't they, but they are a regular employee, right? Is English a second language teacher? Yes or no?
Mhm.
It would have to be after her hours if she is an employee. I think we have.
Okay.
Any other questions?
On number 11, who monitors that? Who works with that person?
Me, Mark, and this is, I'm okay with talking about that for a second. All right. Okay, so this was Dr. Cheryl Davis, who's the principal at Monrovia Elementary. She has worked with in a minority recruitment effort for our assistant principals, is what we've kind of focused on. And so we started this 2 years ago, and she's going around to all of our schools and kind of talk with principals about potential candidates for administrative kind of pathways. And then she's worked with the group to kind of mentor them. And I made a presentation to the local NAACP. We've had some gains that we've kind of needed to make. percentage of teachers. When I got here in January 1 of 2015, I'm going kind of blind here or off memory from a couple weeks ago when we met, was less than 10% of our teachers were African-American, 20% of our students are African-American. In 2.5 years, really 2 hiring seasons, we've been able to improve that up to 13%. Our administrative areas are really focused on assistant principals, felt like that would kind of create a pipeline into principals. We, before I got here, the 9 decades before, we had hired 9 African-American assistant principals. And the 2.5 years that we've had, the first summer, we hired 1 African-American, second summer, 1. And this hiring season, we've hired 7 African-Americans. So we've hired as many African-American assistant principals in the last 2.5 years as we did the previous decade before that. And a lot of that, and we're hiring the best person every time, but a lot of this is due to the efforts with Dr. Davis and Dr. McBride, who we've contracted with to kind of help create some professional development opportunities and pathways for that. And so it's been very, it's been very good to help us close the gap.
So that's kind of just like ongoing forever into the future kind of.
Well, it's not forever. I mean, this is through
year.
December. We don't want long contracts on this. We just feel like it's.
But I mean, the need would be ongoing.
Well, I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, it may not
Okay.
need to be ongoing. Hopefully, we feel like that, I feel like that the goal would be that it wouldn't be needed long-term, obviously. So, and it's good. We want our faculty and our leadership to match what our student population. And so, and we're headed that way, and we've made actually a lot of ground in a short amount of time, and so it's been a good thing. We met actually Dr. Davis a week ago, maybe a week and a half ago, kind of get the plan. We want to be able to sit and reset and be able to adjust things with Dr. Davis on an as-needed basis. That's why I prefer the shorter contract terms.
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the following bids as attached.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second regarding bids. Are there any questions or discussion to follow? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, I recommend approval of the revision to the 2017-18 salary schedule as submitted. This is the new positions that were approved last month.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, I recommend approval of the following personnel items and the addendum as submitted.
Motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Yeah. So the special ed aides, the ones that are listed here, are they, do we lose people? Are we needing more? What? All of the above? We lost some new hires and we're having to hire additional?
That is correct. We just one I had one guy. So, yeah, that was the vacancy, and the other one's not, or we
Any other questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 This is going to be a mouthful here. All right, I recommend approval of the apportionment agreement between the Limestone County Board of Education, the Athens City Board of Education, the Madison City Board of Education, Huntsville City Board of Education, Limestone County Revenue Commissioner, Limestone County License Commissioner, Limestone County, Alabama, and the Madison County Board of Education as attached.
Motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion or questions regarding the lengthy recommendation?
Just ask that Cindy give us,
Yeah.
just the, I've spent a long time this afternoon trying to read this and have full understanding, but just to give us, as you called it, the, what'd you call it?
Cliff notes.
Cliff
version.
notes on, and how this will affect us, and we won't worry about the rest of them.
Well, the good news for you is that it doesn't affect you. This agreement governs the division of tax revenues within Limestone County. So it has no impact on your tax revenues in Madison County. As you recall, in 2014, you were asked to intervene in pending litigation in Limestone County between the Limestone County and Athens City boards, where they had sued the Madison City Board about the division of ad valorem taxes. So you have been an intervenor. The court allowed you to intervene. You've been an intervenor party in this litigation. And so as a result of that, they've asked that you approve it as well. This agreement has been approved on Tuesday evening by Madison City, Athens City, and Limestone County. Huntsville City's board is being asked to approve it tonight. The agreement addresses how they're going to divide ad valorem taxes and sales taxes within Limestone County. The agreement says that the Madison City and Huntsville City students who reside in Limestone County will be counted in the division in Limestone County, which was 2 years ago that the state made that decision for Madison County, is that right? So that's when you received a larger share of the Madison County revenues because those children were no longer counted on your side of the equation.
Yeah, basically, the kids living in Limestone County were counted as kids living in Madison County.
That's how the
So
State Department did it.
Madison County dollars were following those Limestone County kids. So this, when the state in October 2014 made that, October
No,
2015
15.
made that change, we were taking the brunt of this for a decade. And when they made that change, all of a sudden, it made those parties come to the table and really settle this. Because before, why settle it? We were the ones taking the hit on it. So this is good to actually come to a settlement.
So the reason the agreement is so lengthy is there's a phase-ins and guaranteed floors and things like that, but that's really between those school systems and how they chose to negotiate what they needed to do in Limestone County to come to an agreement. From your perspective, it has no impact on you continuing to get your revenue on the Madison County side in the manner in which you have for the past 2 years. Did that help?
Yes,
Mhm.
thank you.
Any further questions?
Anybody else?
Basically, the money follows the kid.
The money will follow the child now, with the exception of these floors and phase-ins
Right,
and things
which
that they
doesn't affect
negotiated.
us.
Does not affect you, that's correct.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right. Okay, the next up is going to be recommendation of the capital plan. I have a couple of potential ones here. So the first one I'm going to propose is Plan A that I submitted to you and that I presented at the work session 4 weeks ago. This one has the new high school with $46 million listed as funded. A lot of the other items below there, we kind of reordered and repriced. That's a fair way to say it, or did another estimate on how much it would cost to complete that. So, so it's a lengthy capital plan with 150 or so items on it. And so that would be capital plan A if it passes. If it doesn't pass, it'll be recommended B. So I recommend to approve the 2018 to 2022 five-year capital plan version A.
Motion.
Second.
A motion and a second on capital plan A. Is there any discussion or question?
I would request that we remove the number that's listed for item 1 in light of what's happened in Texas and what looks like it's going to happen in Florida. And Georgia, there's no telling what the cost would be by the time we were ready to build. So I think that we should remove a number and just,
So right now it has 900. By the time this goes through all the approval and the cost, it may actually
well,
be fewer than that?
I've heard people talking about, you may not even be able to get sheetrock. And it probably for 2 years, materials are going to be. So, I just think it would be wise for us to remove the number, if you'd be willing to do that.
So the tough part is that, when we signed the agreement, all right, 1,600 was the number that came up, and I don't know if that was actually on the capital plan, or if that was just in the agreement, or if it was on the capital plan when they signed the agreement. So I just wanted to be clear.
I think it was on the agreement. Don't know that it's ever been on the capital plan, a number. Has it?
We have added
Yeah.
it before.
The number?
It's been on and off.
15.
That's the number as it would be if we built today.
900 if we started today, yes, it would be the estimate, is what we would need to design it for. Because, see, you got to pick a number to design it for, too, so. Then the bid comes in for 900 at 52 million, well, what do? You reject the bid. And you go back and go, okay, we'll draw it for 650, 700, so yeah, it's,
But you can pass the capital plan without a number.
we
on
can
it.
remove that, okay.
It
All
does
right,
not
well,
have to show a number.
I'll strike that, I'll strike that.
The bottom line is we have $46 million. I mean, the dollars is the for sure
It's
thing. That's
42
all we
million.
got.
We don't.
We don't, it's like
don't have
42.1.
42 million, that's the
42,125.
budget amount until that project's complete. That was originally.
We started
Oh,
with 46
okay.
million, and we're still
We've spent
working
part
on
of it.
46.
Okay.
Right, right. In
In
the,
the- On that
in the budget,
project,
you can
not
see our
on
balance.
something else.
In the back is 42 million.
Okay.
How does, Cynthia, this is a question for you. How does our 60-day continuance factor into this at all? We filed a motion,
Uh-huh.
60-day continuance, to try and find additional funding to bring us up to that 1,600 budget.
Well, those are two separate things. This capital plan, you're required by the state to submit a capital plan. How long have y'all been doing these, Carrie?
This, I think they actually started in the late 90s.
And so really, honestly, the two things are not, the capital plan doesn't control what's happening in the court case. They're really two standalone documents.
The capital plan basically states what the board is willing or committing to do.
The capital plan is designed to let the State Department know what you're doing with your money you have. This is the way I would describe it. Kerry can correct me if he disagrees. What you plan on doing with the money you have, and then what your unfunded needs are. And it's the reason why it's a 5-year plan, to show them the state of your facilities, to let them know you have all these needs.
I'm wondering if we should forego presenting a capital plan as a part of the budget until after the 60-day continuance is complete, because the intent was to try and find some additional funding to bring us up to that full school. So if we're going to recommend a capital plan, it should be reflective of what we want to do, or
We
what
can always
intend
amend
to
it.
do.
I mean, this is where you are today, and then if circumstances change, you just amend it. Is that true? Can you amend it at any time?
Yeah, we amended
Amended
it back in
anytime.
February when Hazel Green's boiler almost exploded. And the way we organize in talking about the student capacity there, so the way we organize this, we have the project name and then the description. So some of these descriptions are pretty specific. Number 9, which was done there, hook up to public sewer system and decommission old sewer system, that kind of thing. So it's, I was just trying to, I'm
Well, that
okay
brings-
with removing that capacity number. I'm not sure why that, I want to, but it's, I worry about the message that has been sent and told. I think I just worry about not being clear on what.
I think
what
the
this is.
message is $46 million.
But part of the agreement, and technically, we would technically be breaking an agreement if we don't build it for 1,600, or that's how the commission views it, correct?
I can't speak to that.
Okay. Any other thoughts on the
I think
900
Mary
number?
Louise's
Does anybody
point
wanna-
is that it's a fluid number, right? Because of all the events that are happening. So to say it's 900 is sort of arbitrary.
Any other thoughts on the listening capacity? Is there a preference?
I don't have a preference.
Is there any further discussion?
I'll remove the capacity from this recommendation.
So the motion as it stands would be capital plan A with number 1 listed minus the parentheses comment of 900 student capacity, no athletic fields. Is
Yeah,
that
and I would
correct?
like to keep new high school on Pine Grove Road.
Okay. Is everyone okay with that motion being changed to that? If there's no further discussion, then all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Myself and Nathan
No.
and David? Is that correct?
Correct.
So motion fails.
All right, I'll recommend, and now, capital plan B, which you have attached, capital plan B lists a renovation, upgrade, and expansion to Sparkman, and budgeting $16 million for that project. Projects that we can fund run all the way to item 49. And so I recommend approval for proposed version B of the 2018-2022 five-year capital plan.
I think this is a mistake, what the board's doing.
Time out. You have to have a
Okay.
motion and a
Motion.
second to discuss
Motion.
it. Sorry. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I think the board's taken completely the wrong direction to say you're not going to build a high school anymore. You've committed to it, you've got an agreement, you've got legal implications. I think it's irresponsible for the decision that was just made. We're in the middle of trying to get more funding, and your decision makes no sense, what you just did.
I think it reflects reality.
Dave, we're trying to get more funding, you know exactly what we're trying to do, and you just cut the lifeblood out of it.
I think we've kicked this can down the road for nearly 5 years.
6 more months, we've talked about this extensively. 6 more months is not going to make one bit of difference. And so you're going to forfeit every opportunity to get more funding for the system, to just take a stand right here. That makes no sense.
I think it shows the communities that we're being responsible with the money that we have.
So you're
do
going to
what we need to
forego
do.
getting any chance of getting more funding just to make a decision tonight. That seems like a good decision.
Up to this point, I'm not convinced that we're going to get more funding.
Well, you're pretty convinced because you just voted to kill it forever.
That's just how I feel about it. There has been a continuous succession of requests for more funding for years. And
It's been 10 years since we have asked the county commission for a half-cent sales tax. 10 years, we have 4 new commissioners, and you're going to go ahead and presuppose the decision and forever cut off that potential revenue. That's totally irresponsible.
I think it's more irresponsible to continue to put something on a capital plan that we know we don't have the funding for.
Dave, you're not
and to
listening.
send it for-
If you
and to send
get a
it
half
forward.
cent, you can afford it, but you're
Well,
forever and ever.
Then maybe
going to
maybe this action will force that.
Good luck with that one.
Well, we'll see.
Is there any further discussion or question on the current capital plan B that is up for motion?
Cindy, can you give any kind of indication of the legal implications?
Not in public. I can address that with you in executive session.
So we
I have
have an
a
agreement with
certification.
the county commission, and you can give no legal guidance on what?
I can give you legal guidance in executive session
Well,
to
we're about
maintain
to take a vote. It's going to be a
confidentiality.
little bit too late for that.
Well, you can ask for a legal executive session prior to the vote.
Okay, well, let's do that.
So we have a motion to move into executive session to seek legal counsel
I
regarding
do have
this term.
certification.
Do we have a second for that motion?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor of going to executive session to seek legal counsel regarding litigation concerning the capital plan? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So, ladies and gentlemen, y'all are more than welcome to stay. We will vote upon return. And then we had a few other items that we would also vote on. So your presence is welcome if you would like to. But at this point, we will move into executive session.
Where are we going?
Well,
Your office?
I don't know the answer to that question.
Matt knew it.